In this video, I'll be teaching how to successfully do an Apollo Style moon landing at Kerbal Space Program, a spaceflight simulation game. Kerbal Space Program has three main modes: Sandbox mode, which lets the player create any spacecraft they want with no limits; Science mode, a progression-based mode that focuses on scientific exploration; and Career mode, which is science mode with the added focus of funds, contracts, and reputations. KSP is centered on the fictional Kerbal system, which consists of 8 planets and 9 moons. For this video, we'll be focusing on Kerbin and the Mun, Kerbin's first moon. An Apollo-style Mun landing has 3 main steps: getting to the Mun, landing and returning to Mun orbit, and landing back on Kerbin. What separates an Apollo-style landing from any ordinary landing, though, is that the ship is divided into 2 separate crafts: a command and service module that will house the crew for the majority of the trip, and a landing module that will take the crew down to the Mun's surface and back to the command and service module. When we build our craft, there are 2 things we have to pay attention to: the delta V of the craft and the thrust to weight ratio of the craft. The delta V is the most important thing to know in KSP. It measures the change in velocity your craft is capable of, taking into consideration the total mass, dry mass, and specific impulse of your craft. The thrust to weight ratio defines the relationship of the power of the craft's engines to the craft's own weight. If the ratio is less than 1 on the surface of a celestial body, it won't be able to lift off of it or stop itself from crashing if it's falling. You can find both of these on the right side of the screen in the staging editor by clicking on the stage you want to inspect. The total craft's delta V is displayed at the bottom of the staging list, and the current stage's delta V is displayed under the stage number. The thrust to weight ratio is shown between the burn time and thrust. By clicking the delta V icon on the bottom bar, you can change what body these are calculated for, as well as the altitude and level of atmosphere. When building a craft, you'll start with an empty valve. You can choose parts from the left panel and snap them into place. I'll show a time-lapse of building my craft, complete with the lander module and the command and service module, as well as 2 lower stages that will get the craft into low Kerbin orbit. My lander has a small engine and fuel tank on the bottom of a small capsule, as well as a ladder and some landing gear for the touchdown on the Mun's surface. The command and service module consists of a command pod, a heat shield for Kerbin re-entry, some parachutes, and a docking port to interface with the lander. I have a few fuel tanks and an engine attached to the command and service module that'll get decoupled during re-entry. While I was building this craft, I intentionally left myself with too little delta V on my lander, which I come up with a neat solution for during my rendezvous with the command and service module in Mun orbit. When we're on the launch pad, you can see the nav ball to the bottom. It hosts a variety of helpful instruments, one of which is Stability Assist. The SAS button at the top right will activate Stability Assist and allow you to target one of 8 markers. The 2 circles with 3 arms are prograde and retrograde, which is directly in front of and behind your craft. The 2 circles with 4 arms are radial in and radial out, which are towards and away from your current celestial body. The 2 triangles are normal and anti-normal, which are perpendicular to the orbital plane, effectively left and right when facing towards prograde, with your current celestial body below you. The 2 crosshairs are target and anti-target, which are directly towards or away from a targeted object. The top left is Stability Assist, which holds your current heading, and the top right is Maneuver, which we'll discuss later. During this launch, I execute what's called a gravity turn, where you pivot your craft slightly in a direction and then let gravity draw the nose of it down. Doing this allows you to fight gravity less and makes it easier to form an orbit than going straight up, where you have mostly vertical velocity and then have to spend more energy making an orbit. At this point, I have an orbit around Kerbin, but my periapsis, which is the lowest point of my orbit, is within the atmosphere, which would eventually drag me back into Kerbin with air resistance if I leave it. I make a maneuver node, which lets me plan out a specific burn in advance and preview how it'll affect my orbit. This is where I use SAS on the maneuver setting, which orients my craft to face the direction I'll need to face in order to make the change I set in the node. When I execute my burn, I wait until the node is half the burn time away. This allows the center of the burn to be exactly on the node, making it more efficient. Here I make a maneuver node using the normal handle to match my orbit's inclination with the Mun's. It's so minor that it doesn't affect my chance of a Mun encounter, but it allows the orbits to intersect. This is a trick I use to make smaller, precise burns like this one easier to execute. By lowering the maximum thrust of my engine, it makes the maneuver node have a longer burn time. It makes it easier to do as a result. The game allows you to set your throttle between 0 and 100%, but the maneuver node calculates it for 100, so this makes the burn time accurate without having to recalculate it on the spot. This is where the mission begins to take shape. I plan a maneuver node to raise my apoapsis, and then search around a bit for a good Mun encounter. I actually do overshoot my burn here by a little bit, and I have to turn towards retrograde and burn a little until I see my Mun encounter again. Now that my Mun encounter is set, I plan a maneuver node at the Mun periapsis to lower my Mun apoapsis until I'm fully captured in the Mun's orbit. I decide to lower my orbit even further here, which will help later when I need to rendezvous with the command and service module. I finally decide to decouple my lower stage, which I was supposed to drop in low Kerbin Orbit. It doesn't really matter in the end, as I brought more than enough fuel in my upper stages. I circularize my Mun orbit here and decide on a good landing spot. I choose that large crater on the far side of the Mun as my landing spot and transfer my crew to my lander, but I forget to swap my control module controls and start burning the wrong direction, which I quickly fix, but I make that mistake a lot more. Here I separate the two modules and start my Mun descent, first burning near the horizon to get rid of all my horizontal speed, and then focusing on controlling my throttle so I don't actually start going back up. The key to landing successfully is to keep a close eye on the altitude meter at the top and your speed at the top of the nav ball. We let Jebediah Kerman take his Mun walk, and then start the ascent back up to Mun orbit. This is where we have to be smart, as our lander doesn't have enough delta V to escape suborbital flight. Luckily, Jebediah brought his trusty EVA pack, which has just enough fuel to rendezvous with the command and service module. I slowly bring up his apoapsis until he's in orbit, and then comes the tricky part. Jebediah on his own has no SAS and can't plan a maneuver node. I have to match Jebediah's orbital inclination with the command and service modules with no assistance. Once they match, it's the waiting game. Jebediah is slightly closer to the Mun, so he orbits a tiny bit faster, and eventually the command and service module will be close enough that we can match the orbits exactly. When the two are within range, I set the nav ball to target and burn retrograde to be moving the same relative speed. Then it's a matter of a tiny burn towards the craft, and Jebediah is home free. With Jebediah inside the command and service module, all that's left to do is touch down back on Kerbin. I burn to escape the Mun's sphere of influence, and then lower my Kerbin periapsis to inside the atmosphere, so we can use the air resistance to slow down. Once we're inside, it's just a matter of burning retrograde until I decide to ditch the engine and deploy the parachutes.